Okay, so you're obviously in the right room, post-exploitation operations with Cloud Sync. By show of hands, how many of you people out here are using, or in your corporate network, or know someone in a corporate network using Dropbox, Box.com, SkyDrive, Google Drive? Better yet, by show of hands, who doesn't know somebody who's using one of these in a corporate network? I'm not concerned with at home, right? I mean, well, I am concerned with at home, but that's not my primary concern. My primary concern is what's happening in your corporate network, right? So before we get started, who am I? Well, I'm Jake, right? I love this stuff. Security is awesome. I'm a chief scientist at CSR Group. We do a lot of defense industrial base and DoD style stuff, although we're branching out financial services and all kinds of other wonderful stuff. Incident response, forensics, pen testing, exploit dev, PhD candidate in computer science. If you have any botnet samples you want to share, or if you have a botnet problem in your corporate network, I'm looking for places to do research. Two-time winner of the DC3 Forensics Challenge, and I'm a SANS instructor and author for malware, cloud forensics, and offensive forensics. So if you don't know what offensive forensics is, come up and talk to me after the presentation. So the agenda, what are we going to look at? We're going to talk about the problem, right? So the problem is that we have these cloud backup and synchronization tools that I don't think, now I think some of Dropbox and Box.com's marketing guys would tell you that they intended for you to use these in a corporate network. But I think once we're done with this talk, I hope that you walk out and realize that there's a different threat landscape than what has primarily been briefed to you. Right? I view this a lot like the email, right? So email back in the 90s, the early 90s, right? We had email. Everybody was allowed to use email. We could send email in and out of the network freely, right? There was no protection. We didn't have any exfiltration with DLP. We didn't have any inbound filtering for malicious executable attachments, right? And then things changed. We got smarter security professionals. We started changing, the threat landscape changed, right? People continued to do some of the same stuff. Exfil via email. They kept doing, trying to send in, I certainly try when I'm doing a pen test, to send in malicious executables as attachments, right? But again, the threat landscape changed because we put defenses in place. There are no defenses for this today. And that's hopefully what we're going to do here today, is raise the awareness level so when you walk out of this room, you understand what the actual threat landscape is. We'll talk about the solution. Well, not the solution to your problems, but the solution to my problems as a penetration tester faced with a fairly complex situation. Look at some of the next steps. Then we'll talk about some insecure authentication via case studies. Talk a little bit about some post-exploitation activities. What do you do after you own the box, right? So you own the box, you find out there's some cloud sync. By the way, if I get buzzword bingo, somebody just yelled bingo, right? But we're talking about cloud. Right, and so cloud sync, what do you do after you whack a box that has actual cloud sync software installed? And then we'll talk about where to go from here. What are our next steps from a research standpoint, both offensively and defensively, right? Okay, the disclaimers. The damn lawyers made me do it. Okay, so my lawyers told me to tell you Dropbox isn't broken, and neither are their competitors' products. Now, when you walk out of here, if you happen to have formed that opinion, I will think nothing less of you. In fact, I will probably think more of you. But our lawyers have told me to tell you that Dropbox isn't broken and their competitors' products aren't either. We don't want you to stop using them because that will cost them a lot of money and they'll probably sue me, and that would be bad, right? You should carefully evaluate your own security posture before canceling any service, changing contracts, yada yada. I promise not to read the rest of these slides. However, these are the lawyer slides, and I want to make sure that I get all this out here in case somebody's got their eyes closed, not paying attention. And Dropsmack is not malware, capital N-O-T, not malware. It's designed to be operated only in authorized penetration testing scenarios, right? Okay, cool, on to the good stuff. I don't like lawyers anyway. Okay, so what's cloud sync, right? This implies more than just online backup. We're not talking about Mosey here. Files placed in special folders, right? Special folders, they get replicated every configured machine. This can include smartphones. Woohoo, right? I'm already thinking about cross-platform attacks that can potentially be done here, right? Everybody remembers the Stuxnet USB style attack, right? Can anybody picture a scenario where now that we have our smartphones synchronizing files back to, right? We've got files that are being synchronized from a machine via Dropbox to a smartphone that then gets plugged in via USB. Couldn't this be the same type of removable media vector? Of course, that one's patched out, but who knows, right? So we have these all kinds of neat cross-platform attacks to include actually attacking the smartphones themselves, right? This is an active area of research for us. So we also have thoughts of maybe infecting files heading for cloud backup, like a Mosey. By the way, not bad. I like Mosey too, right? Any products that I talk about here, we're all good, right? Okay, so, but if we infect something heading to cloud backup, I love to hit backup servers, right? That's an awesome place to go find lots of good data. Maybe we can find great data the client just forgot about, right? Or maybe we can infect their backup so when they find us and they go wipe their machines and reinstall their software, woohoo, we're already there, right? That's all kinds of cool. That wouldn't give us any command and control though, and that makes me sad. Let's talk about things where we get bidirectional command and control. So before we hit that, let's talk about the history of insecurity. And I'm not picking on Dropbox. Dropbox is the only one that has a history of research, right? They're the only provider that have really any research associated. So Dropbox authentication was found to be horribly broken. Those are not my words, right? Those are somebody else's words, but they found it to be horribly broken. And by that, they meant if you get onto a machine that has Dropbox installed, you go find the configuration file. It happens to be, or used to be, a SQLite database. Actually, it still is a SQLite database. It's just encrypted now. Okay, anyway, it's encrypted. We'll go with that for the time being. And so you could copy that onto another machine anywhere, and without ever having the user's credentials, all their files would automatically synchronize back to you. It was like magic, or free beer if you're in the beer business, right? So then a couple years ago, Dropbox said, hey, you know those passwords? We're going to do the not two-factor authentication, we're going to do the no-factor authentication. And so they had a period, a brief period. It's only somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 hours to 16 hours, depending on whether you believe security researchers or Dropbox, right? They may be a little bit biased, right? But cool. So for 4 hours, give or take, no passwords required. Just go at it. If you knew the user ID, which isn't the same as your email, Dropbox assigns you most of these cloud backup storage providers assign you a numerical ID. So if you knew the user ID, you could just go grab all their files. Upload files, download files, free reign. It was awesome. They fixed it. So then Dropbox got into the mobile business and they said, what the heck? We'll transfer all your files encrypted, but your file metadata, and we all know how damaging metadata can be, or not damaging, depending on whether or not you believe NSA, right? So you've got file metadata now being shipped in the clear off the mobile app, right? So it turns out that other service providers, are they doing a better job? No, not really, right? Other service providers just aren't getting enough research cycles to make the headlines. That's really what it boils down to. We'll look at one today that probably will never make the headlines, but cool. So they've definitely made some mistakes. So foundational work. There was a paper that probably 3 or 4 people read, like most Usenix papers, called Dark Clouds on the Horizon. They, as a footnote, they talked about the idea of using cloud synchronization for covert data exfil. Then Frank McLean and Derek Newton, they researched the Dropbox database format and published a bunch of the details, and Dropbox said, that's not good, let's change those right away. Right? What does this sound like, by the way? This is security through obscurity, right? This isn't security, by the way, just so we're clear, right? If when the internals of your file format are suddenly published and you immediately rush to change them so that nobody can abuse them, that's security through obscurity. And just to prove this, a couple guys whose names, well, I can pronounce rough, and I'm going to guess that's Ledoux. I'm guessing they're French. In 2012, late 2012, I believe it was November or December, they reverse engineered the Dropbox software, and they said, we want to look at this. And we want to basically look at how is that file encrypted, because we moved from plain text databases to encrypted SQLite databases. And Ruff and Ledoux looked at this, they reverse engineered it, and Dropbox said, whoa, can't have that out there. Let's change the way we're doing business, right? And by change the way they're doing business, it doesn't mean they actually changed the way things are implemented. They just changed the underlying file format, possibly only the encryption key, right? So why are we here? Well, basically this started all as a case study. We were working with a client. We find Dropbox everywhere we go. Dropbox, box.net, whatever. Doing a pen test, looking at the company, and basically they said, what's the worst that can happen? Oh no, you've thrown the gauntlet down. Let me show you what the worst that can happen is. And so basically the client wants a no-hold-barred pen test, long engagement time, completely black box. We start looking, we do all the regular stuff. If you didn't go to Dave Kennedy's social engineering toolkit talk earlier, right, that's the kind of techniques we're using, right? So set, you name it, going after the web portals, anything public facing, and no luck, right? In some cases, we've actually got some things that are hitting us back, but again, no out-of-date publish or publicly facing servers. Social engineering fails due to awesomely trained employees I actually do wish that this usually happened, right? I want penetration tests to be a challenge. I don't want to walk in and have be in 20 seconds flat, right? It takes the challenge out of it, right? We're all hackers, or I presume most of you guys in here are hackers or at Black Hat for crying out loud, right? We're here in security because it's challenging and it's awesome, and we want pen tests to be challenging and awesome. So physical security, rock solid. The guest wireless network, it's completely segmented from the production network. Production wireless is actually properly secured, right? This almost never happens. We normally send a lot of spam. That fails too. Unfortunately, dog no longer with us, right? But some users actually are clicking on some of the payloads. They're just not calling back. Now, Dave showed some awesome stuff today with SET that may have worked for us, right? That wasn't available then, unfortunately, right? So keep spamming just in case, but no go, right? So social engineering, no go. Spam, nope. Web apps, no go, right? Basically nothing's working. Okay? So time for plan B, right? Time for plan B, because we got fail up to this point. So we find a CISO, right? And he comes to an ISSA meeting and leaves his laptop for about 30 seconds, right? Maybe less. That's all it takes with a human interface device. If you're not familiar with a teensy or a rubber duck, right? Go buy one. They are awesome. You plug them in and they register as a keyboard. And then they will, as opposed to a USB device. Even if you blocked removable media, this doesn't show up as removable media. Rather than transferring a file by, say, like copying it via removable media, this registers itself as a keyboard and types out your binary file. How cool is that, right? So 30 seconds later, we're on his box. Okay, awesome. So surprise, guess what? Your awesome corporate firewall sucks when the CISO is not sitting behind it. And this happens all too often, right? In fact, anybody here that's using the Black Hat wireless network knows, right, that you're going to get hit about 30 times a minute, right, sitting on the Black Hat wireless network, and all your corporate protections are for naught, right? So now all we need to do is pivot into the internal network over the VPN connection, because this is our normal MO, right? We get on the laptop where it's not protected, and then we use the VPN connection to go back into the network. But no VPN. Right? And so this actually, from a pen test standpoint, that was the case. They had decided that, I suspect it was because of incompetent system administrators, but whatever, it doesn't really matter. They decided VPNs were no good. And so they said no VPN on the CISO's laptop, no evidence of USB drive use. And the reason for that was they had awesome, well, there's no such thing as awesome DLP software, but they did have software that was configured to prevent removable media. So prevent the use of removable media. But we find that he has confidential corporate documents, so how is he getting it on the machine? Well, you're going to talk about Dropbox, so you guessed it, it's Dropbox, right? Give that man a cookie. So it could have been any cloud sync software though. Title of the talk though might have clued you in. So what now? So it stands to reason that Dropbox is how we got these files here in the first place. This means Dropbox is probably installed inside the corporate network and is allowed out by the firewall. All we need is C2 over Dropbox. We can already deliver files. Dropbox gives us that ability. We just need command and control. Yep, that didn't work well. Here we go. So Dropspec's born. So Dropspec communicates by monitoring the sync folders for tasking files. Basically what you're doing is you're going to configure Dropspec, and it's fully configurable. All you have to do, we distributed the source code. It's posted online at the Black Hat website. You don't even have to know C++. All you have to do is go in there and you just have to change the names of the files, right? And when it finds a file with that particular name or starts with that name, right? So in our case, I think we're using stats and reporting and something else along those lines. There's 3 of them there, but you could change, make it 8, 10, whatever. Basically what happens then, it looks for those tasking files. And again, those are files of that particular name. Right? It doesn't care what the extension is. It doesn't care what the actual file content is besides the actual tasking. And so it's going to pull the file, or basically pull that file sync folder looking for those files and exfiltrate the files using the same mechanism. So you can say, show me a directory listing of the user's desktop. And when that comes back across to the CISO's laptop, you have an interactive shell on, by the way. Then you can come back and say, okay, well now let me get those other files. And they don't have to be named a particular name. So let's say we find credit card numbers.xls on the CISO's laptop. And he would never have that though, right? Because that would be a clear PCI violation. But you don't want to get that shipped out like that, right? So you can rename it. You can pull credit card numbers.xls and name it something like don't look here.xls, right? Or benign file, right? And so again, fully integrated there. So what's cool is that many DLP applications, and actually I needed to update this because we've tested several and I have not found one yet that actually does. So change this to all DLP applications see files placed in a Dropbox folder as a local file copy. Let it sink in for a minute. All that stuff that you have, all the rules that you have on your DLP software to protect your credit card numbers, your PII, whatever those magic keywords are that you set up, that you say DLP don't allow this to go out, your DLP software sees upload to Dropbox as a local file copy, right? Because you're placing in any folder on your hard drive that just happens to be synchronized by Dropbox. I'm not crapping on DLP software today, by the way, right? DLP is a hard challenge. So hard, in fact, I don't think anybody has it right at this point. But hey, usually we like to use encrypted RARs for these, right? You like to do encrypted RAR files so that you don't see it going out over the network. It makes it much more difficult to check. In this case, though, we don't have to do that because Dropbox encrypts the traffic for us, right? It's going out over SSL, HTTPS. So again, we can exfil files that way. So basically, this is the communication layout. Again, we've got the laptop at home, on the road, Road Warrior, whatever the case is. Ultimately, then, we're using the Dropbox server to pivot into the user's workstation. Again, this is phenomenal from a NetFlow. How many of you guys are using NetFlow? Holy goodness, I see like 3 or 4 hands. Leave this talk and go find out about NetFlow and use NetFlow to defend your networks. It will normally work. Now, of course, I'm going to tell you in this case it's not going to help you, but in most cases it's going to help you, right? Because if you're being hit by APT1 or, oh man, God just killed a kitten somewhere, but if you're being hit by some threat actor, right? If you're being hit by some threat actor, you want to be able to look at why do I have lots and lots of traffic? In particular, I have a lot more traffic going out than I have coming in to a particular IP. That's usually a sign of data exfiltration and something bad, right? This isn't even IDS signatures. This is counting bytes. It's arithmetic, right? My 6-year-old does it. Okay, so again, use NetFlow. But the cool thing about Dropsmack is that NetFlow doesn't work. You've already authorized Dropbox, or either explicitly or by doing nothing, you've authorized Dropbox in your environment, right? And so the only communications you're going to see are the communications between the user's workstation and the Dropbox server, which again are allowed, they're encrypted, rock on, right? So what's the longevity of this? Well, it's slow and it's kludgy. It's not like having an interpreter shell, although we've played around a little bit with actually doing network redirection through this. It's slow and it's kludgy, but believe it or not, we can keep the TCP timeouts from happening. So I would prefer not to use it long term, however, right? If I have bidirectional, or once we have bidirectional C2, I can figure out how to get a more traditional C2 channel past the corporate firewall, right? This isn't a case where you've got some isolated machine sitting off net someplace, right? This thing is on the network. It is calling out to Dropbox for crying out loud. Let's use that command and control to survey our environment and identify how to get out of there with a normal malware command and control, because again, slow and kludgy, right? If I had to use this as the only thing I could, what the heck, right? So we can do trace routes, we can watch legitimate traffic leave the network from the inside, and being able to observe the results from failures helps a lot, because otherwise what we've done here is we've turned we've turned black box testing, where we're spamming and we're just not getting results, into white box testing. We can actually observe to see what ports are allowed out and under what conditions. So what are the features? Well, we implement the following commands: put, get, delete, execute, sleep, move. We thought about adding a bunch more, but really this gets you everywhere you need to go. Everything else is just cake, right? So really, when it comes down to it, put, get, and execute really gets you everything you need. You can do a delete or a sleep or a move via the execute, but I'm lazy. That's the hallmark of every good programmer, and I got tired of doing commands to execute, to delete or move a file there. So how do you deploy this? Well, you just want to use a file infector of your choice. I like Office macros. I think Office macros are awesome. By the way, you should totally block Office macros via Active Directory, right? They're a horrible idea, but Office macros work. And the user, right? The user will almost unconditionally click on the Office macros for the win here, right? Because don't forget, they think they created the file. So when they open the file back on their workstation, back at work, when they open up the file and it says, do you want to allow this? Of course I want to allow it. I wrote the file, right? So again, it's a good deal there. So we could get the victim to open it. Potentially we could wait, or we could employ social engineering. Let me give you my 2-second blurb on social engineering here. If you can't socially engineer the user to open the file, get out of the business, right? You know the file contents, right? You know something about the user. You've been on his laptop, right? We should be able to call or email or something the user here and get him to open it up for some reason, right? Ask for that critical piece of data that's in that file, right? Something, or ask him to add, again, So generally, providing that we don't have some crazy authentication problems, which we'll look at in a minute here, we need to maintain access to the original infection point. So that's going to be that laptop. We need to maintain access to that original point because we have to be able to basically task those files and pull those files back off the Dropbox service. Right. Now it turns out some of these guys employ web applications where we can upload and download files from. We don't yet know the user's password. Right. So we still have a problem with either we need to find some type of auth bypass, right, which sounds like a great idea. That's a direction of research I'd definitely go in. Right. Find some auth bypass, or we need to maintain access to the laptop. But let's be honest, that shouldn't be that hard. Right. So what's new between Dropsmack that we presented at Europe and Dropsmack now? Well, it only operated against Dropbox because that's what the client asked us to look at. And amazingly, so Tech Republic picked this up. They ran an article, got, I don't know, 100,000 hits or some craziness. And we got a ton of comments, and it was absolutely mind-blowing, where people are like, I don't see this as a problem because I use Box. I use SkyDrive, so I'm good. I use Google. I'm like, have you read the article? This is file movement, right? This is, I mean, and you are installing file moving. Yes. So some victims use other synchronization services. Clearly we need a better mousetrap, right? So Dropsmack v2 is a better mousetrap. It hits Dropbox, Box, SkyDrive, Google Drive, SpiderOak, SugarSync, and then this guy down here, JustCloud, right? And so we'll talk a little bit more about him in a minute, but it doesn't really matter. So we've got 7 of these guys right now, and there's no reason that we couldn't add any more, and it's trivial to do. And the source code is publicly available. I encourage you to do it as well, right? Go demonstrate to your CISO tomorrow, or if you are the CISO, call up and stop this before you get home, but demonstrate to your CISO tomorrow the actual threat landscape, right? The actual potential vulnerabilities that you're exposing yourself to by having this stuff running inside of your network. Okay, so enough about Dropsmack. If we get a couple minutes at the end, I'll actually throw some demos up, but it's really not that cool, right? There's not a lot to see because it's running in the background, right? Oh, by the way, before I move on, I did forget about this. Dropsmack originally used to call itself Dropbox Sync. Amazingly, an antivirus vendor who I will not, DropboxSync.exe, an antivirus vendor who I will not name here, but if you want details, come grab me after the talk, actually created a signature looking for DropboxSync.exe. Now, nothing could be more fragile than looking for the actual name of the executable, but sure enough, they did it. And so as we were building this, we thought, we should make this easy to change, and it wouldn't make much sense in the process list to see DropboxSync.exe if indeed you were using SkyDrive. And so changed all that, and this automatically detects which service you're using and camouflages itself appropriately, right? And so we thought about doing some awesome DLL injection into Explorer. I'm sure there's a couple people out there thinking, why are you running processes in the process list? Because the lawyers told us to, right? Because really at that point you're not talking about a pen testing tool anymore. I'm talking about like releasing rampant malware. But you could take the code if you were so inclined and very quickly package it into a DLL. I wouldn't encourage anybody to do that, but rock on, right? So you may not be presenting it at Black Hat and being videoed by the guy at the back there where everything goes on the record for potential long-term court use. Okay, so let's talk about insecure authentication. So when I started looking at these sync applications, everything I saw was HTTPS, with one exception with a mobile service, but they fixed that. Turns out I wasn't the first to report it. By the way, I don't know how I'm not the first to report that and it still happened. Never mind. Okay, good to go. So started looking at this. Everybody's using HTTPS. I thought, awesome, these guys aren't total idiots, right? I'm always disappointed when I think that. I think these guys aren't total idiots. And then I turn out to be disappointed. But I kept looking anyway. Then I found this, and I thought, is it 1999? Right? What happened precisely? So not only is this a checkbox, but this is actually the default. And for those of you in the back whose eyes may be strained, HTTP is the default for authentication. Please authenticate over HTTP and not HTTPS. I have no idea what the rationale behind this is. No idea, right? So this is just fail, right? So they actually go through and they talk about how, don't worry, we send all of your files using HTTPS, so you're perfectly secure. Who cares whether you use HTTPS if you authenticate using HTTP, right? I mean, everybody in the room here, I think, can develop a trivial exploit against this if you're authenticating using HTTP. You know, Jean-Luc Picard there will tell you one facepalm just can't do that justice, right? This is cool. If you hate your coworkers or your ex, you can refer them to the service and get free storage, right? Awesome. So who is this? Who produced this big bag of fail? By the way, I'm looking for all kinds of Twitter hashtags with BBOF, right? Hashtag BBOF, big bag of fail, right? But seriously, right? Who produced the big bag of fail? This one's called Just Cloud. It's a company you've probably never heard of. I hadn't either, right? But it turns, until we started doing cloud research, it turns out that they have several different brandings that are part of Backup Grid. And so this backupgrid.net guys, yes, okay. So the ones we looked at, they were using the same awesomely secure software. So this is like a rebranding, reselling. What's really cool about this then is that this problem is exacerbated over several different services, not just one, right? And again, people are using this. They're paying for it, right? It blows my mind. How did I find Just Cloud? So I was actually, for an earlier presentation, because I'm just thinking, why am I picking on, this is like picking on the slow kid, right? Why am I picking on these guys? Well, I was actually searching Google for SkyDrive because I was looking for their logo, right? And I wanted to use it for an earlier presentation. I Googled SkyDrive, and this actually popped up in news for SkyDrive, right? And they're like, forget SkyDrive, Dropbox, Google Drive, right? Get the top cloud storage free. I thought, what the heck? I got nothing better to do. My blood alcohol level is probably 0.06, 0.08, something like that. Cool, I'll take a look at this. Right? I don't think this is really news, but it was under community events, so you can just drop your Dropbox and, yep, I don't want to live any place with paper like that, but cool, okay. So then I went to try and disclose this. And there's no contact info at all. Welcome to reseller storage. So I did go to Backup Grid. I didn't go to Just Cloud originally. I went to Backup Grid. But it turns out that if you're not buying something from them, they really don't give a cat's meow, expletive deleted, right? So this is great news, no contact info at all, but the login form, believe it or not, is HTTP. And it's not one of those magic HTTP forms where it only posts to an HTTPS form, right? We've all seen those before. Those are still a horribly bad idea, right? Horribly bad idea. No, this one just posts to an HTTP form. So before we're done with the presentation here, I will definitely go ahead and click on that. Somebody will own my newly minted Just Cloud account, right? And we can see what's there by the end of the day. So, cool, let me log in. Okay, wait, I can just, so I never register with Backup Grid, but that's cool, don't worry. I register with Just Cloud and I can just go log in there. Right, and so it turns out if you have a service using one of these resellers, you have service using all of these resellers. Right, they're all rebranded, they have their neat little pictures, all that good stuff. So, okay, I thought maybe I'll contact support. No, they don't have links up there at all, right? And so I'm thinking, are you clowning me? What's going on here? Okay, well, it's cool. So again, there's a service called Zip Cloud. It uses exactly the same software. And so I started doing a little bit of searching for these guys, and it turns out that they're number one from an SEO standpoint is the top 10 best, it's a big mouthful there, but the top 10 best onlinebackup.com, which is my go-to source for all advice on cloud services, right? I mean, and it should be your, no wait, don't. That's on video. I don't want you to go there as your number one source for, right? So I'm looking, what kind of clowns are, so you go look here and it turns out that Just Cloud is number one, Zip Cloud, I have a strong feeling that mypcbackup.com, also trending upwards, in the number 3 spot there, is probably also using backupgrid.net. I just ran out of time to look at really poorly written software, right? So, but look at where Dropbox and Box are, right? Way down at the bottom, right? SugarSync at least is making an appearance somewhere here. SugarSync, for those who don't know, is actually a legitimate service, right? It's on par probably with Box and Dropbox. It's just targeted more towards the corporate environment. Woohoo! Awesome. Cloud synchronization targeted at the corporate environment. Yeah, we should look at that too, right? Okay, so I thought, are we done with Just Cloud? No. Okay, so Just Cloud has some awesome, this wasn't like a one-time thing. It wasn't like they thought, or technically it's backup, it's probably backupgrid.net, right? Their reseller, their backend. They thought, hey, why screw it up once when we can screw it up lots of times, right? And so if you're sitting on an email server, and by the way, if you're a pen tester and you're not sitting on an email server, shame on you, right? But if you're sitting on the mail server and you've seen email from Just Cloud, it just might be your lucky day. Actually, scratch might, it is your lucky day. Okay, so then they send you these email links, and the first thing I'm expecting from software written that's this cool is they're going to send you in plain text your password, right, as opposed to like a password reset link. They don't. That's awesome, right? They actually have a chosen by you, right? But they don't send you the password. Anything else stand out though? Well, these clowns like HTTP a lot, right? And I'm thinking, well, okay, but they're not that stupid. At least the link is only used to verify the email address I registered with. Whew, okay, we're safe, right? Then I found out, no, free beer, right? This is totally free beer. The link never expires. So sitting in your email server something that you long ago forgot about, right? And by the way, these guys are trying to target corporate services as well. They have corporate service plans, right? Sitting in stuff you long since forgot about in an email is a link that will log you in directly to to your account at justcloud.com, where all of your files can be pilfered and downloaded. Mind you, at this point, none of that bandwidth, right? All that NetFlow stuff we talked about earlier, where there's more data going out than's coming in, we're pulling this from justcloud.com servers. The really cool part is you'll get the bandwidth bill for it, right? While we've pilfered all your files, and you won't see it on your NetFlow monitoring. That truly is free beer, right? It doesn't get much better than that. So the login link never expires. It's a multiple use auth token. So I'm speechless, right? So literally had to grow extra arms, right? So, okay. So we're picking out a little bit here, and so we continue to look at other applications, and we're looking to see possible exploitation avenues that they might provide. By the way, I want to clarify, and this may be because I just ran out of time. It's possible it's because I just ran out of time. Nobody else we looked at was this bad, even close to this bad, right? So, but do some of the core services have some potential problems? And the answer to that would be yes. Okay, so let's talk about generally, what do you want to do post-exploitation? When you find that you're running some of the cloud synchronization services, obviously, you want to go try and pilfer files directly from the cloud. I know how effective that whole NetFlow thing is I was talking about, right? With that whole asymmetric pattern of life there. I don't want to pull your confidential files directly from your workstation when you have uploaded them to the cloud for me, and I can pull them there using your account. That's a much better idea. We should do that. We could upload infected files to the cloud. This could be a long-term persistence mechanism, right? Again, picture the case where you have wiped the drive, you scanned all your files, and then you reinstall Dropbox or name service here, and it downloads all of your files, you go open up your exploited again, right? This sounds like a long-term win to me, right? In particular, again, we're uploading files, we're modifying a file that the user had already created. I'm just going to go put exploit.pdf there. Let's grab an Office doc, right? Something that the user's created, the user thinks they've created, modify that and push that back up to the cloud for them. I always find it interesting to see where else the user is connecting from. In 2 different pen test scenarios that we've done, we have found those, I don't want to call them, I guess it depends on what space you're in, right? The credit card processors call it red side and black side, and I'm sure DoD calls it, classified and unclassified. But we found networks, research and development networks that we didn't know existed previously, right? By going up to the cloud and looking for other connected devices and saying, what is that computer that is connecting to Dropbox? I don't know, let's go have a look, right? And so all it takes is that user opening the document, and again, we know if Dropbox is synchronizing, great. How about evil? And obviously this isn't something you do as a pen tester. I certainly don't advocate that you do this, but it turns out that once you have command and control on that box, you're able to log in, and you can cancel the account. It doesn't ask you for their password. You're already logged in. You're them as far as they're concerned. And so we've tested this on several different services. The ability, once you own that laptop, once you own that initial piece running cloud sync services, where you can just delete the account and all of the user's files with it. That's awesome, right? I mean, from a destruction standpoint, it's scary, right? Scary or awesome. I don't want to make it sound like it's something I want you to go do, but it sounds like we should probably put more checks and balances in here. Sometimes files have been deleted from the host, but we can go back into logs that for whatever reason some of these guys never delete. Some of these guys never delete, they just bloat your profile. And we can go find information about files previously sent to the cloud that may not exist locally. And this is SkyDrive. So SkyDrive here, I know this is difficult to see in the back, but it shows red shot, right? So it shows that I did some uploading of a particular text file. We know the size of the text file. We don't know the contents yet, but if we know anything about SkyDrive, we know that that's, even if it's been deleted locally, providing I have the right tier of account, it's still sitting in SkyDrive. Even though it won't be synchronized back down, I can go into my deleted files, my recycle bin, if you will, in the cloud, and go pull this file back out. Right? This is awesome, by the way, from an e-discovery standpoint. For any of you guys who deal with any type of compliance, right? This should scare you because many of these services do revision control, and there are revisions of files that you would probably wish in a litigation were not stored anywhere, especially not out in the cloud. Right? We can grab databases. So most of the time what we have are SQLite databases. So we can actually go in and locate databases stored on the client, and these usually tend to be better because in this case we're looking at just cloud, but box.net or box.com does this as well. And so what you're able to see here is not only the file and the folder where it was at, but also a hash, and that turns out to be an MD5 hash of the file. So now we're going a step further than just having a file name. We can actually prove a particular file was located on a box at a particular time. So granted, it's a little more forensic-y than pen testing, but it does help to get a historical idea of what was on the user's machine and when it was there. And it turns out that there are databases that will save this even after those files have been deleted locally. Why? I'm thinking programmer laziness, right? But again, we can use that kind of stuff to our advantage. Okay, so this is pretty cool from Just Cloud. And so users can be enticed to enter phone numbers for free add-on storage. This actually happens with some of the mobile stuff too, right? Phone numbers are awesome for social engineering. I can think of all kinds of things to do with phone numbers. Most of them are not legal, right? But again, if you're a black hat, what do you care about legality anyway, right? So in some cases, the web interfaces actually allow file upload. Now, picture the Just Cloud example, right? You have a link that logs you in anytime you want, from any device you want for that matter. Turns out the Just Cloud's even a little lazy about actually logging the IP that you're coming from. Woohoo, right? That's awesome as well. And so with that email link, we can move malware to the, I'm thinking dropstack, not malware, pen testing tools, right? We can move those to the endpoint client. Right? So we can upload and download the files. Now we don't even have to maintain access to that initial laptop. We can do it all through the web or all through the cloud, right? Using their web interface. And that's awesome too. Right? Oh, go ahead. I saw the click. Oh, okay. So this one is my favorite by a long shot, and this is Dropbox. I have no idea, and if anybody in here has any ideas, please come up and talk to me after the fact. I do not know why your cloud storage requires an RSS feed. I can't think of any legitimate use. I can think of tons of illegitimate uses for this. I can think of 0 legitimate uses. So it turns out that you can click this little button and turn on the RSS feed, right? Once you have access again to their account. Turn on the RSS feed. You don't even have to go back and check Dropbox at this point because you have an RSS feed. You don't have to go back, log into their account. It tells you, FYI, you just uploaded whatever. In this case, it's crashreporter.exe. Now, when you click on that link, you actually have to authenticate to grab the file. But if you have one of those nice permanent authentication links, what do you care, right? Okay, so we kept looking and we looked at Spider Oak. How many people in here have actually heard of Spider Oak before? These guys were my favorite. Right? So I liked these guys a lot. For those who don't know, Spider Oak is kind of a little bit different. The idea is that they don't store anything unencrypted, right? And by unencrypted meaning they can't read it themselves, or at least they claim, and that's about the best we're going to get with the cloud, right? So they claim they can't even read the files that are there. They're encrypted client side, uploaded, and they're encrypted with your key, right, that's generated client side. Okay, so that's cool. This is kind of like Boxcryptor. If anybody's heard of Boxcryptor before, that was another big critique I got after Black Hat Europe is this would totally fail with Boxcryptor. And we've tested it and it totally doesn't fail with Boxcryptor. So if you're worried about that, don't worry. Most people set Boxcryptor to stun, which basically means Boxcryptor, by the way, as an add-on for these services. They allow you to encrypt your files locally so that Dropbox then can't read them, right? So you have your key. But the reality is most people don't individually encrypt and decrypt files because, let's be honest, right? That's a pain. I mean, it's from a usability standpoint, it kind of goes out the window. So what they do is they set up Boxcryptor, and anytime they see files that get dropped into the directory, they encrypt them and send them up. When the user wants to use them, they decrypt them and pulls them out. So again, if you've got it set to auto encrypt and auto decrypt, rock on, right? Okay, so we do the prevent, Spider Oak will prevent an upload or download of the file from the web interface. There's no reason you'd be able to pull it from the web interface. Spider Oak couldn't provide it to you anyway. They don't have the keys, right? They claim not to have the keys at least, and I believe it. So we're looking through Spider Oak a little bit though. We found out that it allows local network backup. And this was kind of interesting. So basically the idea here is that you can configure a server locally that you would like to back up files to. And so sounds weird, but they're the encrypted portions of the files. And so what I did is I went and did a little bit of web searching and found out a little bit of web research and found out a lot of people actually do this. Awesome. So I found out a lot of people actually do this, right? So with the Spider Oak, with the saved creds piece, and here's what it looks like. And so what's happening here is that you put in, your IP where you want to send this stuff to, and your username and your password, and you can see TCP port 22. That's awesome. That's SFTP. Being the reverse engineer guy that I am, I do a lot of malware reverse engineering and vulnerability discovery and that stuff. I was totally going to RE You do a bunch of reverse engineering, get this stuff out. That was my plan. Because I like stored creds because they allow you to pivot to other network locations. You have a guaranteed user login at this point on some remote server in their network, and I'm betting if they're doing it for this one in a corporate environment, if they're doing it for this guy, they're doing it for a lot of people, right? And so we can get onto the server and maybe it's not patched, all that good stuff. And then we looked at the drop down and we noticed FTP is allowed. And that made me all kinds of happy because it saved me all kinds of time. We didn't have to do any reverse engineering. This stuff is still out there. This isn't a vulnerability technically, so they don't want to fix it because you have to have, let's be fair, right? For you to exploit this, you have to already own the user's laptop, right? Now we're talking about a pivoting mechanism. But realistically, for this to work, they have to save the creds. And for you to change SFTP to FTP, it doesn't ask you to re-enter the creds. The creds are still there. Granted, they're masked. I checked the little, could you unmask them using one of those usual, one of the usual suspects? No, you can't unmask them. It wasn't quite that easy. But that's okay. You just change the config to point to an FTP server, start up an FTP server, put files in the sync folder, and SpiderOak will dutifully synchronize those to the web and FTP into your server with plain text credentials, and now you can go own that SFTP server somewhere else, right? Which makes me all kinds of happy, right? And so we haven't used this yet in a network pen test, but you should. And when you do, right, let me know about it. I would love to hear about it and put this in as a success story, right? Because that's profit at the end of the day. It's like a free network pivot to something that is guaranteed to be a server, and that makes me just giddy, right? And we looked a little bit further, and they have this little checkbox where you can enable remote diagnostics. And I don't know what the F remote diagnostics are, but they really sound like trouble to me. Right? So we're talking at this point, I have no idea. We haven't done the reverse engineering yet. I ran out of time to look at it, but I'm betting this is another big bag of fail. Right? So kind of like the Just Cloud stuff. So prevention, right? Please, for the love of security, start whitelisting. Right? It makes the job just moderately harder. Pen testing in general, it makes moderately harder. Let's be fair, whitelisting isn't going to cover you in every case, and certainly again, we can get around it, right? I would actually suggest that you use services like SpiderOak that don't store your files unencrypted in the cloud, because that takes that whole bypass out where we can get rid of that laptop and just go directly to the cloud. I can't do that with SpiderOak because they don't offer it as an option. And the reason they don't offer it as an option is because they don't want to. It's because their architecture doesn't allow it. Right? They don't have your keys, therefore they can't provide you anything. Why implement the interface? Boxcryptor is another option. So the bonus is you can keep using the same service, but if you just unwittingly encrypt and decrypt your tasking files in exfil, this will not help you a bit. Right? In fact, you then become part of the evil chain there. Right? How about detection? We want to look for those tasking files on the end hosts. Turns out this is very difficult because, well, you can change the tasking file names, and I'm sure somebody will have a signature for the 3 that we publish on Black Hat, so don't use the ones. Don't use the executable that you can download from blackhat.com. Download the source code and compile it, right? It's just that easy. Just press build, change a couple of the strings in there, and press build, and you're done, right? I thought about doing external configuration files, and then I thought that's just one more thing that somebody's going to signature on, and you'll have to recompile anyway. Why add the complexity? If you do detection though, if you employ a next generation firewall, oh, somebody should be on buzzword bingo now, come on, right? If you employ a next generation firewall, you could potentially watch for sensitive data leaving the network. This presumes that there's some exfil to detect. So if we're not exfiltrating data that matches any of your DLP signatures, I talked to a lot of the next generation firewall guys here. I actually kind of baited them into discussions right in the vendor hall, and nobody that I talked to was able to actually do anything with this. Right? So as we walk through the scenarios, there were a couple that are like, yeah, so we do SSL in the middle, and I'm like, oh cool, so you're going to decrypt my SSL. That's SSL proxy, that is what an next-gen firewall is. And then we said, so how are you actually going to prevent the files from leaving? Well, we'd run standard DLP signatures against, really? Is that ready to go today? I can go deploy this at my office. They're like, well, so conceptually, got it, okay, yep. So nobody was ready to sell me a product this week, right? So, but okay, possibly. Thanks. Watch your process list. This shouldn't be news, right? You should be watching your process lists anyway. Again, if we do something like DLL injection, that's not going to help you. But again, whitelisting, right? Makes the job that much harder. So Dropsmack can get a lot better. We looked at re-implementing it as a shell extension and or injecting into Explorer. Again, the lawyers, so that makes it look a lot like malware. Granted, our lawyers aren't really that smart. We had to explain to them, the consequences and the hem and the haw. But ultimately they said, hey, is there a legitimate pen testing use where you would need to persist long term on a box, inject it into Explorer as opposed to running the process list? So, well, no. They're like, well, then it's malware. Okay, I give up, right? So, what we can do, and we've demoed this a couple of times to clients, is bridging multiple synchronization services. Right now, it's a little bit of a pain. We have to run 2 instances. What do I mean by this, by the way? Well, picture that you have a user. We've compromised him on the road. He's running Dropbox. And we get back into the corporate network, we're in that process list, and we see SkyDrive in the process list. Well, I know where Dropbox goes, but I don't know where SkyDrive goes yet, right? And so Dropsmack at the moment won't check multiple folders and deconflict. Created a lot of problems for building the tasking files. So what we did when we demoed this is we just uploaded another copy of Dropsmack, pointed to SkyDrive, and said go. Right, we had to disable the automatic checking because it detected Dropbox again, and that was bad. But so we just pointed at SkyDrive and then created different tasking files, and don't worry, they just copy across one folder to the next, and now we're off to places we never knew existed before, right? This again is like free beer. We could create unique identifiers that would help resolve this. Again, that just complicates your job in using this, right? Going out and pwning corporate networks using Dropsmack. I mean, checking, testing security in an authenticated manner using Dropsmack, right? So again, unique identifiers would help. So there are client-side pop-ups, and this still needs to be addressed. I do a lot of malware reverse engineering. These pop-ups happen a lot in malware, right? These pop-ups actually happen to be legit. But when Dropbox synchronizes a file, you actually get a little pop-up and it says, hey, FYI, right? There was a file added or a file changed or a file deleted. Most users probably don't care, but you know, we might want to get rid of those. So the idea that we had running, and we implemented it for Dropbox, and they changed something, probably not because of us, but we changed something, and it's just a lot of work to keep up with. It's to get the window ID. A lot of malware does this for security products. So when the bubble pops up, it immediately clicks the bubble before you can see it. Right? So it's monitoring it, it hooks that window creation process. I'd like to hide the tasking files, but really exfil, it turns out, is really less of an issue because Dropbox sees it as you put, and these synchronization services see you as putting the file locally, so they don't alert you on that. It's just when you're tasking, it's coming down. So before I break here and take questions and or we go enjoy the vendor hall or whatever the case is, talk a little bit about cloud synchronization vulnerabilities. There are a ton of vulnerabilities in these cloud sync products. If you're not convinced now after this, right, where we looked at a couple of these guys, let me tell you there are definitely more out there. We have a couple that we're sitting on that for a couple of reasons for where the funding money came from, we can't disclose here. Okay, but there are a ton of vulns in cloud sync providers. Mobile versions seem to be much more buggy than the desktop versions. I didn't think that was possible, but it turns out the mobile guys really are. The vendors appear to be rushing to market with little concern for security, and the bug bounties are almost completely missing. Dropbox is cool. They have a bug bounty, as it were. They'll give you a certificate, right? So basically, you go troubleshoot their code, you find a vulnerability in their code where their stuff's broken, and they give you a certificate? Really? Are you clowning me? Right? Okay, yeah, woohoo! Right, okay, so, and I'm not saying, right, again, lawyers said we can't disclose because of where the funding came from here. I'm not saying these guys have an O-Day. But I can't make this crap up. Basically, their responsible disclosure guidelines, I pulled this morning just in case this had changed. Their responsible disclosure guidelines basically say something along the lines of, to encourage responsible disclosure, Box will not initiate any legal action, thanks, against security researchers as long as they adhere to the following guidelines. Basically, it's, hey, tell us all the stuff, wait as long as we tell you to, right? And don't disclose anything without us telling you, or without us telling you we're ready, and we won't sue you. So basically their plan is, promise not to sue me if I don't embarrass you. Yeah, let me know how that one works out for you, right? And so long term, this is a really bad idea. I'm sure now Box will never hire me. That's honestly, yeah, I'm willing to run with that. Okay, so, yep, so demos. So we had a, yeah. So I'm almost out of time. I think, no, I guess I've got, yeah, so 5 minutes with the questions. I want to pump into a couple of demos here. Please bear with me though. We had an awesome crash last night. I'm sure somebody whacked a box there, but that's cool. So I had an awesome crash last night, but we'll work through a couple of demos. Like I said, not horribly exciting, except for popping into the auth piece. So I want to do a couple of credits though before I do this. My wife puts up with a really, really crappy travel schedule. If you see me at DEF CON with a redhead, come give her an unsolicited hug, right? So thank her for her patience, and then Doug Ford, the owner of CSR Group, for making it such an awesome organization to work for. Okay? So, and complete your speaker feedback surveys. So before, because Black Hat wants you to remember that, complete those surveys, meaning go badge in over there at the obelisk. Okay, so what I have here is I've got, I've got this guy. Let's see if we can work on this here. I just registered a new email address this morning. I'm sure I'm violating some terms of service, but I feel comfortable that the CFAA, it doesn't actually apply for term of service abuse here. Or I wouldn't do it on video. So, let's see, Just Cloud. Awesome. So here's the thing. I'll go ahead and blow it up so everybody can get a picture of it. Go own this, right? I'll tweet it out here in a minute, but go own this and upload some files, and we'll see at the end of the day. I'll write a blog post on it or something. We'll see how many awesome files end up in Dan's Just Cloud control panel. And so again, this seems like this just seems crazy. But you click this, and providing I'm still connected to the wireless network and somebody hasn't blown me off, you can see here that I can protect all my files today. That's awesome. But we're logged into the control panel. This should never happen, right? And again, this is still going today. So if you find this in your network and you see anything going to backupgrid.net, right? Run, do not walk, right, to your nearest security. Black hole that stuff, right? This has no business on your network. Backupgrid.net. Right? They're the jokers using HTTP authentication. Now, you're at an HTTPS site, right? But again, this is not a one-time link, right? We can copy this. We can open up Internet Explorer where we've never logged in, right? And go to justcloud.com. Tell you I don't use Internet Explorer much. Right? Asks me, do I want to register? I want to log in. There's no evidence at this point it has any stored creds. Just paste that in. Waiting for the wireless network. Got it. Cool. Somebody's hacking me right now because I'm in HTTP, right? And they should be. They should be hacking me for using HTTP and authing here. And sure enough, here we go. We're back into this is horrible, right? This should not be happening, right? So several things, again, that we can do. We can ultimately use, let's see, where's our, so essentially we can do the view the sync folder. And then it'll ultimately let you upload files to your sync folder, right? So right here it says, do you want to add files? Sure. Let's select files and we'll just upload them up there, right? So again, this creates a condition where once you whack the user's laptop, you don't even have to have ever been on the user's laptop in this case. These jokers, all you have to do is have been on their email server, right? Or sitting as a man in the middle where they were getting their email, right? Or even better yet, sitting as a man in the middle someplace just upstream from backupgrid.net. That would be an awesome place to be, right? I'm putting my black hat on there for a minute, but yeah. So essentially, though, this is the kind of stuff again that still exists today, right? It's out there. This is inexcusable. And again, these guys in the synchronization app are authenticating using HTTP. So they authenticate back to their service using HTTP. Like I said, I'm going to go here and try to run a demo, but understand that, before I do that, let me show you the, so if you want to change this, essentially this is the way, as I'm telling you guys to go use this in your pen tests, I'm willing to bet that somebody, although these are hard to signature against, but basically what happens here is that we're looking for files that begin with, in the default build that's out on blackhat.com, you're looking for files that begin with stats, figures, and results. These seem fairly innocuous for normal business users, right? I figure they have lots of files that look like that. In fact, I checked. Many of them do have lots of files that look like that, right? But so again, if you want to change this, just change any of those and you can name them anything you want. Those are the names of the files that are going to be looked for your tasking information. Now, if the user happens to create a file that legitimately is stats12.xls, fear not, nothing blows up on their machine. It just keeps chugging right along. When it doesn't find any tasking, it just keeps going right on, right? You don't have to name your files anything in particular. By the way, when they try and open up yours that clearly is not an Excel file but has an Excel extension, Excel doesn't care either. It just says, looks corrupted, right? And the user curses a little bit. Turns out the tasking file isn't there long anyway because we self-delete it, right? So it goes away almost immediately, which is, again, I think fairly awesome. So before I try and jump into what is likely to fail from a demo standpoint, let me show you again some of the file names that are here at this point. So we tried to go with this helper, this underscore helper.exe. So whatever the process name is in the list, because again, system admins I found are generally they're gun shy, right? They're really gun shy about trying to blow away processes that look legit, right? And so again, in this case, We're looking for Google Drive helper, just cloud helper, so you kind of get the idea. So if the original name is just cloud.exe, look for helper.exe. And again, the code is out here. It's there for you to use. But don't signature on the file name, for the love of goodness, because, again, anybody can trivially change this without knowing anything about programming. Right? So, let's see. And again, my wireless network is trash. Yeah. So it looks like we're not consuming the tasking file right now. I had a failure, like I said, at lunch, literally. I had a failure last night, did a little bit of rebuilding, and then had another failure at lunch. It turns out the Dropbox is running, but it doesn't see the file. So we see our Dropbox sync. That's a slightly different build, but it's not picking up the file. I apologize for the demo failure, but what I will do is open up stats1.txt, and again, this can be stats1.anything. And basically here, I was going to launch calc. It's literally as simple as that, right? So again, we can name it anything. We can actually put garbage in front of it, right? Garbage in front of this. It'll search for at the beginning of a line, right? Because we're breaking a new line characters, and it'll search for basically the exec command or any of the other commands that are detailed in the white paper that's out at blackhat.com. The other thing I'll point out is that we've had several successes here with actually putting an OLE header at the beginning of the file, which is really awesome, because now if you run the Linux file command against it, it says that it's legitimately a Word document or legitimately an Excel document. And so, meanwhile, though, we're still able to pick up tasks. And now, of course, Excel won't open it because it's corrupted, but hey. So again, if you want to maintain a little bit of stealth, that certainly is one way to do it. So with that, considering that my software blew up, like I said, just shortly before we came in here, I'll go ahead and open the floor to any questions. No questions, really? So either this is a horrible talk or, okay. Well, hey, I really appreciate your time. I know your time is valuable. Thanks.